that the 4th of July is happening tomorrow. Well, it's not actually that good for me because my husband's English, so it's a very sensitive holiday in my household. But did you know anyways, because he's not watching, that 250 years ago, Americans revolted against imported goods at the Boston Tea Party? I know what my gut has told me about the situation from the moment that it took place. I know what beyond my gut and beyond my dreams, the statement from Andrew Colbert, "It was supposed to be you." Was it? Was it? Is it fair to ask if it's plausible that when Charlie was taken to the Hamptons, the phone call no one wants to address from Bibi Netanyahu, is it fair to ask the question if it was literally supposed to be me who was supposed to be back on tour with Charlie? Did he say no to killing Candace Owens? And then did he become a liability because he said no? What did Charlie turn down from Bibi Netanyahu while Erica was there? Again, the people that were present don't even want to acknowledge the phone call. I only got an acknowledgement that it happened from Erica. Going, everything is wrong here. That's my natural intuition. I didn't want to then extrapolate and jump to conclusions until I spoke with Jillian. If I'm a fraud and I say, oh, well, what we can extrapolate from this biblical text, you know what? We don't need to be so exact anymore, and we can just extrapolate what we need to tell the public a certain narrative, okay? And I want to say that we can't necessarily extrapolate that from what we're looking at, but they then try to extrapolate that error to mean that the broader picture. But Xavier Poussard, in his book, Becoming Brigitte, is unequivocal about exactly who Jean-Michel Trogneau is. He wants you to know that the Frankists even charged that the Talmud made use of Christian blood obligatory. We know that the tweets they were sending in the instant were obligatory. Obligatory to say, this is a terrible thing that happened. She was doing the obligatory rounds and having to pretend that she likes Black people. And she visited of our politicians, just obliged them. And yeah, so if we're going to do it, like if we're going to do the thing and we're going to say we're not going to be isolationists, the Matrix hates me. I will never win any more accolades, probably never be invited. You certainly aren't going to win any accolades in Hollywood if you write a script and the protagonist is a part of the nuclear family unit. He handed all these accolades in life, and we allowed them to create a caricature of a Republican. There's this caricature of Candace Owens out there. The idea that Candace Owens is super hard now is more of a media caricature. Because maybe you've fallen for a caricature, or you will be caricatured. And the absurd things that the press will do and try to caricature certain people. The media did a very good job of creating that caricature of me, trying to defame you, trying to caricature you as an unhinged, crazy, loony person. I just saw you as a caricature. Caricature. Girl, I have been maimed, fired, caricature. I'm watching right now. The media will attack you and caricature you, and it's always been that way. Even the Christian community, etc., the FBI, etc., Soros, etc., testimonials, photographs, etc., espionage, weapons, trafficking, etc., fresh and fit Trump, Alex, etc., shooters, etc. So look out for, etc., buying your book, etc., NPR stuff, etc., Paul Morania, East Brandenburg, etc., BLM, January 6th, etc., conversion, etc., a moose or two down, an elk, etc., a moose or two down, an elk, etc., an elk, etc., an elk, etc., 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 Wayne Maxwell and Epstein, etc., in the 1940s, etc., 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 you name it, bromances, etc., 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 right? Oh, lucky for Olivier Duhamel, the statute of limitations had already expired. So he was never brought to justice, saying that like she had discovered the statute of limitations was not up. In fact, it is. And by the way, because the statute of limitations had passed, he was never brought to justice. But he admitted that said that they would not extradite him because the statute of limitations had expired on war crimes. So you can, I don't want you to make friends. I want a person who's going to be out there saying, we're going isolationist, okay? I don't care about women marching in the streets, so that all of our politicians just oblige them. And yeah, so if we're going to do it, like if we're going to do the thing and we're going to say we're not going to be isolationists, a lot of Americans feel depressed by that because we're just going, when are we allowed to just be isolationist?
Right. When are we allowed to focus on what's happening here in America?
Isolationalist. The isolationalist.
The isolationalist.
Wouldn't be on the brink of my seat. Look, the short and the thick of it is really thought that what you were saying seemed so far outstretched. But now I'm realizing I guess you can just toss another coin in the I told you so jar. That's nice that he has entered the fray. Alex Jones jumped into the fray. Since the decision very clearly had to have been made, we were left to assume that it had been made in the umpteenth hour. Constantly instilled in me, I don't, swing for the next team. These are the people who you need to stay away with. And since you've already completely exacerbated every effort to have a PR machine come after me, who are going to be shouting all sorts of questions like you. Were there tryouts? I don't know. I kind of want to know. Were there tryouts? Was it like curtain call? Did people line up in an auditorium? Well, it sure as heck seems that everything is so fake, and that is how it has felt from start to finish. Welcome back to Bride of Erica. They were ever intentional. They wanted the public to recognize that Erica was Charlie's husband. But he did tell me another interesting little tidbit, a little anecdote. One morning, he would often, I guess, speak to Erica about how close he was. Okay, I really don't remember it. And then suddenly, towards the end of Obama, we started hearing all of this rhetoric drummed up. It became white versus black all over again. And they didn't like that rhetoric. They didn't like the idea of a liberal or a progressive plantation. And they killed me, and a guy wrote a whole article about it saying that this rhetoric is racist. In the highest point of ridiculousness, they accused me and my rhetoric of inspiring a mosque shooting in New Zealand. People are getting tired of this rhetoric. We're being tired that we are being told by you guys to hate people based on the color of their skin or to be fearful. We want results. We want policies. We are tired of rhetoric. And the numbers show that. Okay, I have to tell you guys something before we get into comments, because I need to know that I'm not the only person who didn't know this. Okay, I didn't know this, but also Savannah didn't know this, so at least two of us didn't know this. I was on a walk with my husband, and it was thundering, I think, and I was like, oh, no big deal, we can keep walking because there's no lightning. And he was like, what do you mean by that? And I said, it's just thunder. Lightning is the problem. And then my husband was like, that it can't thunder without lightning, right? That thunder is the sound of lightning. My mind was completely blown. I promise you, in my 35 years of living, I had never heard that. And I just need to know in the live chat right now if this is just a girl thing, because me and Savannah didn't know this, or is this literally just me and Savannah are the only people in the entire world that didn't know this? Or are you shaken to your core as I was yesterday and as Savannah was this morning, learning that thunder is the sound of lightning? I don't know, guys. I have to just kind of share with you random tidbits of my life. She created this hyperbolic idea. Obviously, they are extremely hyperbolic. Okay, I'm probably being a little hyperbolic. So hyperbolic, and I'm not saying that in a hyperbolic way, a little hyperbolic or loose figurative or hyperbolic language. You were just being hyperbolic, and rather hyperbolic and non-actionable. I'm being hyperbolic here, but I'm being facetious a little bit, hyperbolic. You're going to be hyperbolic. And
how are you going to know where he goes and shit, though?
I'm being hyperbolic. Really hyperbolic.
The greatest experiment in self-government in the history of the world. And that's not hyperbole, that's a fact.
But really, it was about the architecture, I want you to understand. Sitting there across from Alex Clark, like, Catholic, no, he just liked the architecture. And I no longer accept him and Erica, and he liked the smells and the bells. He loved the architecture, but there was no more substance for him. It'd be like, he loved the architecture of things, but beyond that, nothing was happening. I think this may have been about more than the architecture. The architecture of things, architecture, and the architecture. And so I'll give you an analogy, or actually an anecdote, not even an anecdote, a reality of how that can serve people. Black Scorpio writes, I am so very disappointed in Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi, who all made these grandiose promises to get the Epstein files until they got confirmed into the administration and now toe the line. We also learned that last night a bomb squad and agents from the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco, Firearms, the ATF, obviously. What is the Bureau doing? Has anybody traced this down? Were you brought into an FBI bureau? Who's a former Bureau of Prisons chief? Because there is a bureau that has been corrupt, rebuilding this bureau. Chief of the Utah Bureau. is the borough's public-facing spot, cleaned house at the state borough of the old Federal Bureau of Narcotics, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Out of all of the FBI boroughs in the United States, 55 main boroughs and over 350 satellite boroughs, the FBI sent the specific Connecticut borough, that borough, to UVU. I wonder what moved them to send that particular borough, which just feels like you got a lot around you, a lot of options. It wasn't exactly like, were you brought into an FBI borough? I assumed everyone was just doing things and she was gathering herself and she was like at home in the fetal condition. Nope, she was in the office every day. You, in this moment, have retired Green Beret and the former lieutenant colonel. I actually think he's still a lieutenant colonel of the Army. The maroon color in the military means the color is famously associated with military forces, such as the maroon beret of airborne troops around the world. I did not grow up in a Prince household beyond a couple of his major hits, namely Raspberry Beret and When Doves Cry. Get comfortable, you guys, because it is going to be a long week. I have so many explosive revelations to share with you. So it was a philosophy class called Senior Sem, and he used to come in every day with a debacle, and he would ask us to just work through the philosophical question. I remember that whole debacle. This debacle with her earrings. The Hamptons debacle came up. The Brett Kavanaugh hearings and debacle involved in this entire debacle, okay? The FISA debacle. His recent non-vote on the FISA debacle, Kanye West debacle, Christ is King debacle, to Christ is King debacle. That's the Jeffrey Epstein debacle. And Jeffrey Epstein, this whole debacle could never had any sort of a debacle ever in my life. I think that these people are not humans, that they're sentinels that maybe look like humans. That
what a debacle. Anybody else feel the same way?
Was not coming out of racist ideas, right? It wasn't because people were just trying to delegitimize him. It was because this must just all be crazy rantings. Every day, Candace is up on this show like Miss Cleo from the 90s and just like predicting what she thinks happened. It's such a ridiculous way to try to delegitimize the research that we have done. Now, I don't know how you're able to comment. She pulled the good old Barack Obama, dropped a book, an autobiography that was meant to legitimize her to the Black public. And everyone that should be using their platforms to try to get to the bottom of what happened to him and asking similar questions is instead calling out Candace Owens and waiting for her to make a mistake so they can try to delegitimize every effort that she is making to get to the bottom of this thing. It just reeks. We want the CEO and the chairman of Turning Point USA to answer, okay? If you can't compartmentalize, then I don't see how you're going to be able to, we don't like them, we don't agree with the industries they went into. All of that can be true, but you have to be able to compartmentalize that when you are looking at a case. Since long before this ever broke out between her and Justin Baldoni, that we have to compartmentalize. Blake Lively is not a good person. Or Donald Trump from the #MeToo movement. It is very important to compartmentalize how you feel about somebody personally from how you are. Can't compartmentalize. To compartmentalize that. To compartmentalize. I laughed out loud. Everybody uses the term blitzkrieg. And the NFL football team say blitzkrieg. Yes, it relates back to Germany. It's a bombardment strategy, so that's why we use it when you're going to bombard. And so I called it Blitzkrieg Week because we're just that German word. You can't even say blitz means lightning. Krieg means war. Last I checked, people are still allowed to speak German. And last I checked, everybody uses the terminology blitz, blitzkrieg. Washington Post certainly does when they're describing things that's happening at the White House.
Bruh.
It was just yesterday, that we scooped the Daily Wire's cringe news show, designed quite literally with the intention to mock me and Tucker Carlson. It's always got to be Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens together, like we're partners. Even